Enough is enough. Enough of her brattiness. The whole
Getting up and working hard every day, you have to, you're a working teenager. So there's so many things to balance.
Tell us just, is this how your personality is, or is this something that you've developed over the last few years? Like, how do you
Not going to leave this country and escape anything, because there is nothing to escape from.
Shut up, damn prisoner. Eala's courtroom explosion destroys Leila de Lima, the scandal that broke the Philippines. You think you've seen drama? You think you've witnessed heated battles in sports, politics, or entertainment? Let me tell you something right now. You haven't seen anything yet. Because what just went down inside that courtroom wasn't just a confrontation or a disagreement. No. This was an absolute nuclear detonation that has sent shockwaves rippling through the entire Philippine archipelago and beyond. We're talking about Eala, the golden girl of Asian tennis, the pride of millions, the young champion who was supposed to be polite, composed, and media-trained to perfection. She just absolutely lost it in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Shut up, damn prisoner. For words. Just 4 earth-shattering, jaw-dropping words that have silenced an entire nation, paralyzed the media establishment, and turned a former political heavyweight into what can only be described as a public embarrassment. The courtroom went silent. Dead silent. You could have heard a feather hit the floor. The story of how we arrived at this moment, involving allegations of abuse of power, political manipulation, forced agendas, and a mother's absolutely ferocious defense of her daughter, is without question the wildest, most insane ride of the entire year. If you thought Eala was just another quiet, obedient athlete focused on her backhand and forehand, you need to wake up right now. The gloves are off, the battle lines have been drawn, and the verdict in the court of public opinion is being written as we speak. Welcome back to Champions Tennisitics, your absolute #1 source for the rawest, most unfiltered, and most explosive tennis news on the entire planet. If you're new here, you just walked into the middle of history being made. Do yourself a favor right now and smash that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell, because trust me when I say you absolutely do not want to miss a single update on this war. Now let's dive deep into the scandal that has set the entire internet ablaze and has everyone from Manila to Madrid talking. To truly understand why a young tennis superstar would explode at a former senator in open court, we need to rewind the tape and look at the buildup. This didn't just happen overnight. The tension between Eala and Leila de Lima has been simmering, bubbling, and brewing like a tropical storm gathering strength over the Pacific Ocean for weeks now. But until this moment, it was all handled through whispers, rumors, and carefully worded statements. Not anymore. The dam has burst, and the flood is unstoppable. It all started when reports began surfacing that Leila de Lima, a polarizing political figure known for her controversial past and her time in detention on drug-related charges, had allegedly been applying serious pressure on Eala. The accusation? That de Lima was attempting to strong-arm, coerce, and essentially bully the young tennis prodigy into participating in specific political and social campaigns, particularly focused on LGBTQ promotion initiatives both in the Philippines and during her international tennis tournaments scheduled for next year. Now look, athletes supporting social causes is nothing new in today's world. We see it all the time. But here's where this story takes a dark turn. According to the explosive details that are now leaking out from multiple sources, this wasn't presented to Eala as a polite request or an opportunity. This was framed as a demand, as an obligation, as a duty that she supposedly owed to certain political interests. And Eala? She wasn't having any of it. In a move that surprised many people who have always viewed her as the obedient, well-mannered darling of Philippine sports, Eala drew a hard, unmovable line in the sand. Her stance was crystal clear and surprisingly blunt for someone so young. She can force anyone to do what she wants, but not me. I don't like promoting these things in sports. That statement alone was enough to cause serious ripples through the Philippine sports and political establishment. In today's climate, where athletes are constantly pressured to align with various social movements, refusing to participate is often met with immediate backlash, accusations of intolerance, and attempts to cancel or destroy reputations. But Eala didn't back down. She stood her ground with the same determination she shows on the tennis court when she's down match point. She insisted that her racket should do the talking, not a political banner or social media hashtag. She wanted to play tennis, to represent her country through athletic excellence, not through forced political theater. But as we all know from history, when you say no to powerful figures who are used to getting their way, they rarely take it gracefully. And Leila de Lima, known throughout her career for her sharp tongue, her relentless nature, and her willingness to fight dirty when necessary, decided to make this intensely personal. The situation escalated from a private disagreement behind closed doors to an all-out public war when de Lima took to the airwaves. In a live television appearance that can only be described as venomous, calculated, and absolutely brutal, the former senator didn't just criticize Eala's decision to refuse participation in the campaigns. She went far beyond that. She attacked her character, her upbringing, her loyalty to the Philippines, and essentially tried to destroy her reputation in front of millions of viewers. She went straight for the jugular with the precision of a political assassin. De Lima, visibly agitated and clearly angry that someone had dared to defy her, looked directly into the camera and branded the young champion a traitor and hypocrite. She mocked Eala's meteoric rise to international fame, painting her not as a hard-working, dedicated athlete who had sacrificed her childhood for tennis excellence, but as a lucky child who had somehow stumbled into success and had now conveniently forgotten her roots and the Filipino people who supported her journey. The insults were flying fast and furious, each one more cutting than the last. A kid who got famous thanks to Filipino support, but now lives like a European prince and refuses to give back to his own people? De Lima sneered, her voice absolutely dripping with sarcasm and contempt. It was a calculated, deliberate attempt to turn the Filipino public against Eala, to paint her as an out-of-touch elitist who took the nation's support for granted while supposedly living a life of luxury in European training facilities, sipping espresso in Spanish cafes, and forgetting where she came from. The attack was designed to strip Eala of her national hero status, to transform her in the public eye from beloved champion to ungrateful sellout. It was brutal, it was deeply personal, and it was clearly designed to break the young star's spirit and force her into submission through public humiliation. De Lima was essentially betting everything on the assumption that Eala, young and media-trained to be polite and respectful, would fold under the immense pressure of public scrutiny. She thought she could bully the tennis star into compliance or shame her into silence and eventual cooperation. She thought she was dealing with a frightened teenager who would crumble when faced with political power. But Leila de Lima made a catastrophic miscalculation. She forgot that Eala is a fighter at her core. You don't win Grand Slam junior titles, you don't conquer the professional tennis circuit, you don't survive the brutal grind of international competition by being soft or easily intimidated. You survive by developing a backbone of absolute steel. And de Lima also forgot one other critically important thing in her arrogant assessment of the situation. Eala has a mother who is essentially a lioness, fiercely protective and absolutely ready to destroy anyone who threatens her cub. Before Alex could even formulate a public response to de Lima's television attack, the cavalry arrived with overwhelming force. Riza Maniego Eala, Alex's mother and longtime protector, watched that interview, and she absolutely lost it. And honestly, can you blame her even for a second? Imagine seeing your daughter, your child who has worked tirelessly since she was barely able to walk, who has sacrificed a normal childhood for tennis excellence, being insulted on national television, being called a traitor and hypocrite simply for wanting to focus on her sport rather than political activism. That is a line you simply do not cross with a mother, especially a Filipino mother who has dedicated her entire life to supporting her daughter's dreams. Riza didn't issue some carefully crafted, lawyer-approved press release. She didn't call for a peaceful dialogue or measured discussion. She went straight for the throat with zero filter and maximum aggression. In a shocking public message that stunned the entire sports world and sent the media into overdrive, Riza fired back at de Lima with the force of a freight train. "You have no right to force my daughter," Riza declared, her words virtually scorching through screens across the nation. "If you continue, I'll see you in court." It wasn't just a statement. It was a direct, unambiguous threat of serious legal action. It was a mother protecting her cub with everything she had. But the most biting, most powerful part of her message was the absolute defiance radiating from every word. She made it crystal clear that the Eala family was not going to be bullied, intimidated, or manipulated by political figures, regardless of their former status, their connections, or their influence. The message was brutally simple and impossible to misunderstand. Back off immediately, or pay a very heavy price. But De Lima, never one to de-escalate any conflict or admit any mistake, doubled down with shocking speed. Less than 5 minutes after Riz's warning shot across her bow, the former senator responded with an insult that made everyone watching gasp in disbelief. She dismissed Riza as a foolish old lady, no different from her daughter. She essentially called both mother and daughter stupid, irrelevant, and beneath her consideration. That was the match thrown directly into the powder keg. That was the moment everything exploded beyond anyone's control. Calling the mother of a national hero, a woman who has sacrificed everything for her daughter's success, a foolish old lady? That is a level of disrespect, arrogance, and stupidity that usually ends in absolute chaos. And chaos is exactly what we got, delivered with interest. This brings us to the moment that has absolutely everyone talking, sharing, debating, and choosing sides. The scene that will be replayed for years to come. We're in what appears to be a formal courtroom setting, likely some kind of hearing, legal mediation, or perhaps the inevitable legal confrontation that Riza had promised. The atmosphere is thick with tension, so heavy you could cut it with a knife. De Lima is there, likely holding court as she loves to do, speaking with that same contemptuous, superior tone she used on television, probably surrounded by her legal team and political allies. She's lecturing. She's criticizing. She's once again bringing up the lucky child narrative, digging into Eala's supposedly humble origins with a sneer, implying that Eala owes her complete obedience to whatever causes De Lima personally deems important for the Filipino people. The arrogance in the room must have been absolutely palpable. You can almost visualize the smirks on faces, the eye rolls from the political entourage, the assumption that they had the upper hand and were simply lecturing a naive schoolgirl who would eventually see reason and fall in line. And then, like a volcano that has been building pressure for months, Eala snapped. It wasn't a childish tantrum. It wasn't a whimper or tearful breakdown. It was a volcanic eruption of pent-up frustration, righteous anger, and pure rage that had been building since this nightmare began. The young tennis star, usually so composed and controlled on the baseline, even under the most intense pressure, stood up and unleashed a verbal forehand that smashed directly into De Lima's face with devastating accuracy. "Shut up. Damn prisoner." The echo of those words must have bounced off the courtroom walls for what felt like an eternity. Damn prisoner. Let's unpack the absolute nuclear significance of those two words. This isn't just a generic insult thrown in anger. This is a weaponized, precision-targeted reference to De Lima's controversial past, her incarceration on drug-related charges, her legal battles, her fall from political grace. It was Eala essentially taking the moral high ground, looking down from that elevated position, and throwing all the mud directly back at her attacker. It was a complete rejection of De Lima's supposed moral authority to lecture anyone about duty, loyalty, or proper behavior. By calling her a prisoner, Eala was essentially declaring to everyone in that room, and everyone who would hear about this moment, "You are a criminal. You have absolutely no standing to lecture me about anything. You are beneath me. You have no power here." The room froze in absolute shock. The legal aides stopped typing mid-sentence. The lawyers dropped their expensive pens. The court personnel stood motionless. De Lima herself, undoubtedly used to being the one dishing out the verbal punishment and watching others crumble, was visibly stunned into complete silence. It was the classic moment when the bully finally gets punched directly in the nose and suddenly realizes they're not invincible after all. Eala didn't just defend herself or push back gently. She absolutely annihilated the entire power dynamic with 4 perfectly chosen words. This wasn't just about refusing to support a campaign anymore. This was a full-blown rebellion against political control of athletes. This was a declaration of independence. This was a young generation saying enough is enough. For Leila de Lima, this is nothing short of a complete disaster that may permanently damage what remains of her political career. She picked a fight with the absolute wrong national treasure at the worst possible time. Attacking a beloved athlete, especially one as accomplished and admired as Eala, is always an extremely risky move in the Philippines, where sports stars are treated with reverence approaching that given to religious figures. By attempting to force her personal political agenda on Eala through intimidation and public shaming, she has alienated not just a massive chunk of the youth vote, but also the entire sports community and millions of moderate Filipinos who believe in individual choice. And getting called a damn prisoner directly to her face in a formal setting? That is a soundbite that will haunt her for the rest of her life. It reminds everyone of her legal baggage, her vulnerability, her fall from grace, and her diminished moral authority to lecture anyone about proper behavior. This story also highlights a massive cultural shift that's happening not just in the Philippines, but globally. It's the old guard versus the new generation. It's traditional politics versus individual autonomy. It's the pressure to conform to approved narratives versus the fundamental right to individual opinion and choice. Eala's refusal to support the specific campaign might be the initial spark, but the explosion is really about control and who gets to decide how athletes use their platform. Eala is fundamentally saying, I own my brand. I own my voice. I own my career. You don't own me. Whether you personally agree with her stance on the specific social issue or not, you absolutely have to respect the autonomy she's fighting for. The days of politicians snapping their fingers and expecting athletes to jump obediently into line are rapidly coming to an end. And let's talk about the mother again, Riza Menyego Eala, because her role in this cannot be overstated. The Tiger Mom energy is off the charts. Her threat to see you in court is almost certainly not an empty bluff made in the heat of anger. If De Lima actually used her former position, her political connections, or any form of leverage to harass or coerce Eala, there could be very real, very serious legal consequences. We might see a defamation lawsuit. We might see harassment charges. We might see abuse of power investigations. This courtroom drama might just be the pilot episode of a very long legal series that plays out over months or even years. As we speak right now, reports are flooding in that fan clubs across the Philippines are organizing rallies and demonstrations in support of Eala. There are already rumors circulating that merchandise is being rapidly produced featuring the now infamous slogan, "Shut up, damn prisoner," on t-shirts, caps, and banners. It's transforming from a courtroom outburst into a full-blown pop culture moment that will be referenced in Philippine culture for years. On the other side, De Lima's camp is absolutely scrambling to control the narrative damage. They're desperately trying to spin this entire situation as Eala being intolerant, discriminatory, or against human rights to deflect attention from the accusations of bullying and abuse of power. They're attempting to make this about social justice rather than political coercion. But the narrative has already completely escaped their control. The image of Eala finally standing up and screaming in court is far too powerful, too emotionally resonant. It's the universal image of the victim fighting back against the bully, and that narrative is impossible to reverse once it takes hold. We're also hearing persistent whispers that other athletes might step forward with their own stories now that Eala has broken the silence. If Eala was pressured in this way, who else has been subjected to similar treatment? Is this an established pattern of behavior? Are there other sports stars who have been silently forced or coerced into campaigns they didn't believe in but were too afraid to refuse? Eala might have just opened Pandora's box, and we could be looking at the beginning of a much larger scandal involving the intersection of politics and sports in the Philippines. Champions Tennisitics will be following every single development in this story as it continues to unfold. Make absolutely sure you're subscribed to this channel because you know with complete certainty there will be a part 2, and probably a part 3 and 4 as well. This story has legs, and it's running fast. This is Champions Tennisitics, where we bring you the champions, and we bring you the chaos, the controversy, and the truth that other channels won't touch. What do you think about all of this? Was Eala completely out of line for screaming in court? Or was it the absolutely perfect response to someone who had pushed her too far? Do you stand with the so-called European prince, or with the damn prisoner? And what about that devastating statement she released? I want to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your reactions. Blow up the comments section below. Let's get a massive debate going because this is the kind of story that demands discussion. And listen, if you want to stay on top of this story as it develops, because you absolutely know there will be more explosive revelations coming. You need to make sure you're subscribed right now. We are tracking every motion, every tweet, every court filing, every development in this war. Hit that subscribe button. Smash that like button because it genuinely helps us get this truth out to more people who need to hear it. Turn on those notifications so you don't miss a single update. Share this video with your friends who think tennis is boring and show them that the real match, the real battle, is happening off the court in courtrooms and press conferences. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you also subscribe to our brand new channel Champions Tennisistics, where we'll be bringing you even more exclusive content, behind-the-scenes analysis, and breaking news that you won't find anywhere else. Until next time, keep your eye on the ball and keep your ear to the ground. This story is far from over.